Hi Ghosties, I'm Macy.
And I'm Natalie.
And we all need a good wholesome fright every now and again.
I agree.
So I thought I'd bring that to you guys today. We have an episode full of lighthearted, wholesome, ghostly palate cleansers, all written and submitted by you guys. I love stories like these, and though Natalie is tired of crying on the pod,
I am.
I don't think we've had enough. So get your tissues, your snacks, and your comforting craft, and we'll dive right into these most wholesome listener stories.
I'm not ready.
I mean, some of them are a little spooky, not all of them are cry-worthy, but they're still all just like more lighthearted. Nothing too overtly
demonic.
Yeah.
All right.
Our tea today is a repeat. It's the Slytherin Pomegranate tea.
Let's go.
Okay, jumping right into it, our first story is from Renee. Hi ladies, I stumbled across your podcast one day when I was looking for background noise for a writing session, and I binged every episode from beginning to present, and am now a weekly listener. I love the show, and I hope there are many more years to come. Oh, thank you so much. Like most people who write in, I have a few experiences of my own, but I thought I'd share a more lighthearted experience from my aunt. It makes my family chuckle every time it's told, so I hope Natalie finds this one more amusing than terrifying.
I'm already excited.
Back in January of 2014, my maternal grandmother passed away very unexpectedly. She was a strong woman who, over the course of her life, battled and beat breast cancer twice and cervical cancer once. And I can say without a doubt that nobody in my family expected to say goodbye to her so soon.
Wow.
That's so amazing that she fought that hard through all of that.
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for your loss. We definitely didn't expect her to go before my grandfather, who had been suffering from emphysema for years and was permanently attached to an oxygen tank. He was in and out of the hospital all the time. She was the matriarch that kept the family going, and her loss was devastating. After she passed, it fell to my mom and her sister to help do everything around the house. My mom is the oldest of her 4 siblings, so my grandfather automatically looked to her for things like caretaking and handling accounts. On the other hand, he looked to my aunt, who was living with him at the time, for more mundane tasks like cooking and household cleaning. One thing he kept asking of her was to clean the grease filter on the range hood over the stove. As is to be expected, life got busy, especially when my grandfather's health started to decline. He was constantly in and out of the hospital. My mom was barely home because she was always over helping my grandfather. My aunt was struggling to keep up with work, raising her son, and taking care of things whenever my mom wasn't there to help. My grandfather was running them both ragged, and all the while he kept asking my aunt to clean the bloody grease filter. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon in July of 2014, I came home from work to the news that my grandfather had passed away. After years of battling his emphysema, a bout of pneumonia had proven too much for him and taken him out. Although he died in the hospital, my mom noticed the next day that the clock in the kitchen at his house had stopped at 3:34, which, you guessed it, happened to be the exact time he'd passed away.
Whoa.
Then one night, a few days before the funeral, it happened. My aunt and her son were fast asleep in their beds when suddenly there came what they described as the loudest crash either of them had ever heard in their lives. My aunt was instantly out of bed, darting over to look into the dark hallway. My cousin stuck his head out of his bedroom, insisting that he hadn't been the one to make the sound. So my aunt crept out of her room and went in search of the source. It's the middle of the night, so she's turning on lights as she goes, looking for anything out of place. Nothing seems amiss. That is, until she reaches the kitchen and turns on the light. There, on top of the stove, is the grease filter that my aunt had spent the last several months not cleaning. It had never, ever fallen out before. She called my mom the next morning to tell her what had happened, and my mom said, "Well, he has been asking you to clean it for months. I think he's making himself perfectly clear. Clean the damn thing, or he's going to haunt you." My aunt cleaned that filter until it was absolutely spotless, then slotted it back into its rightful place. My grandfather never bothered her again. I hope you ladies have a wonderful spooky season and keep up the fantastic work. I'll be listening. Much love from Australia, Renee.
Okay, we're off to a good start.
That's cute, isn't it?
I love it. That is so funny.
He's like, I've been telling you for months.
Clean it! That is so funny. And honestly, like, period. Good for him.
You know what? And maybe it's because we did the whole burnt toast thing. My mind, like, was he protecting them from something? A grease fire or something because it was so dirty?
Yeah. Maybe. That's what I thought you were going to say, like, a fire happened.
Me too. But no, he was like, hey, before anything happens, I want my people to be protected.
Aw.
I love you guys. Now clean it.
Yeah, that's cute.
That's really cute. Thank you, Renee. Our next story comes from Alice. Hi, Ghosties. I recently found your podcast, and I am so incredibly glad I did. You're doing an awesome job, and these stories are the best company while I work on my illustrations. I have a little lighthearted spooky story of my own to share. When I was 4, my family moved to a rural town in the mountains. We lived there until I was 7. The apartment we rented opened into a long corridor with 3 doors on each side, and my room is at the very end of the corridor, as it had a nice little balcony. My mom put a small couch at the very end of my bed, which faced the balcony. At some point after we lived there, I started waking up in the middle of the night. At the end of my bed, sitting on the couch, would be what looked to me like an old man. Since it was dark, I could mostly just see his shadowy shape. He would just sit there, looking at the window. I was absolutely terrified at the time and would just bury myself under the covers and panic until I fell asleep again. This happened very often while we lived in that house. I would say dozens of times. One time, he turned his face back to me and waved. Another time, I woke up laying down and he was standing next to me. He never did anything, just kind of hanging out. Of course, being a child, I was terrified, but looking back on it now, I don't think he was scary. He was just there. I would tell my mom that the place was haunted, and she always told me that there was no way because the place was relatively new. She would tell me that I was just scared because the long corridor was a bit creepy, but I was very sure of what I saw. He would just sit there and would not disappear even when I blinked hard or looked away. Throughout my life, I'm in my 30s now, I would bring it up sometimes and she always insisted that there was nothing. Last year, we went on a trip together and the subject of our beliefs came up. We chatted about what we believed in and I brought that place up again. She finally came clean and told me that the place had been owned by an old man before we moved in who had died in my bedroom.
Wow.
She was so freaked out by the fact that I could see him that she could never bring herself to tell me the truth. Anyway, I think he was a nice man and somehow I feel like he was looking out for me. Thank you for your awesome podcast. Looking forward to some awesome merch. Best, Alice.
Okay.
I was scared at first.
I knew that the mom knew.
She was not telling the whole truth.
I was going to say I would say that I would do the same thing. I'd be like, no, you're crazy. You're like, no. Because would you tell your kids?
No, but it took until she was in her 30s. This was like at least 23 years ago.
Okay. I mean, yeah, no. It would take me that long too to finally admit it to myself even. Yeah.
Like that actually happened. Mm-hmm. I think I was a little scared at first because like the thought of just an old man standing by the bed, turning and waving, acknowledging you. But
no, the wave was too much.
Really? He was just like, hey, now we share a room. This was my room. I love the view outside. This balcony's great.
That's true.
This is where I spent my last days.
Okay.
Welcome.
Wholesome.
I'll make sure nothing else comes in here.
Oh, God. Okay.
Our next story comes from Sierra. Hi, girls. My name is Sierra, and I thankfully haven't had any scary encounters since I was very little, and I believe there's a reason for that. When I was young, I used to have very severe sleep paralysis and nightmares. They stopped shortly after my grandfather passed away. My dad's side of the family has always believed in the supernatural. I believe I'm protected by him, my grandmother, and now my father as well. Now, I believe I was visited by my granny quite a few times, but the real meat and potatoes are the stories where my dad has visited me. So for context, my dad, my stepmom, and myself have been extremely close. Then later, my oldest niece became like my little sister, and I lived with them after I moved out and a little before I left for the army. While I was pregnant with my first child, my dad came to stay with me for a few weeks to install some flooring. And while he was here, he found a tree frog. And that was the first frog. Spoiler, not the last one. I am scared of frogs. Like, I will cry if it's near me scared. I don't know why. My dad was a big prankster, though. He used to always find ways to prank me and mess with me. Now that we have context, let's get into the stories.
Oh, gosh. And hey, I relate to the frog thing.
Yeah.
I think the little tree frogs are cute. That's fine, but stay away from me. If it's a big toad,
I'd like to look at a frog. I don't want to be near a frog. My best friend growing up loved frogs.
I was thinking about it, but I don't want them to be near me.
Story 1, several frogs. Since my dad passed,
that's like apocalyptic. Just instead of locusts, it's frogs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, I just
frightening
gave myself a chill.
Sorry, I said it wasn't scary, but it actually is for you.
Yeah.
Since my dad passed away, I have been terrorized by the green tree frogs. We used to have 1 or 2 every now and again, and now they are everywhere. I always yell at my dad's urn when they get in the house because how did it get inside the door handle, Dad? I know it's him still messing with me, and especially when I really need to pick me up, I'll walk out the front door and a frog will try to jump on me. I scream, see what it is, laugh, and tear up, say hi to my dad, and that I love him. While I'm still terrified of frogs, I love being scared by my dad.
Okay.
That's cute.
That is really cute.
Story 2, Hurricane Helene. During Hurricane Helene, I was in the direct path of it, but I wasn't that prepared because I wasn't supposed to be in the direct path. I had essentials, but that's about it. Well, I woke up randomly, definitely not a coincidence, an hour before I was hit and checked the radar and was in the direct path now.
That's so scary.
I got up, grabbed both my sons, 10 months and 2, and ran to the downstairs bathroom and started charging our electronics as much as we could. The hurricane got terrible and my house is surrounded by trees. Once I realized trees were falling on our house, I started crying, cuddling my boys, begging my dad to protect us. Once the storm stopped and the sun came out, I went outside to check the damage. I was trapped in, and there were trees all over my house, and the smallest tree in the back of the house, we were in the front, was the only tree that went through the house. While I was outside seeing everything destroyed, a frog jumped on the porch, and I knew he definitely heard me and protected me and my boys.
Oh, that's really cute. That's a horrifying story, though.
That is
Something to live through like that. That scares me.
I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Weather is something that really scares me too, because you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
It's like, if the storm is raging, if there's a tornado, hurricane,
I don't know if it's because I watched Twister or Where the Heart Is when I was so young, but I've always had this like innate fear, like deep down within me, fear of tornadoes.
Where the Heart Is.
Such a good movie. I just watched that again the other day.
Yeah.
So good. If
Also,
you haven't seen it, Natalie Portman.
Why are you naming your kid Americus? Sorry to all the Americuses out there, but that's never sat right with me.
I mean, it worked for her, and that's all that matters.
It's never sat right with me.
Story number 3, Hurricane Helene, Aftermath. The best story. When I finally got some kind of service, I called my stepmom, niece, and husband, who was on a work trip at the time. They all came immediately. No one knew I would be hit this bad. The next day, we were at the house with all the windows and doors open, chatting about everything, basically including stories about my dad. We were laughing at a story, and my front door slams shut. And I looked at my dad and told him, "Dad, that's not funny, it's hot. We don't have any power or AC." The door slowly opened back up, like in a shameful way, if that makes sense. My stepmom and I just smiled at each other knowingly. Meanwhile, my 16-year-old niece starts freaking out that it actually happened, and we just laughed and told her that we get signs all the time like that, and she just needs to pay more attention. I just wanted to say, of course, that I adore the podcast, but also I'm just being myself, and they hate it.
Oh,
you said that.
Dude, that's so funny. That threw me off. I was like, wait, what?
I think I need that on a shirt.
I'm just being myself and they hate it?
Yeah.
Hey, that was so long ago. That took me a second to, I was like, what? That is the type of spirit I would like to be.
Just like a little funny, like little...
Just be messing with y'all. Yeah. But I would never use any type of frog or bug or anything.
Well, you're also not really a prankster.
No, I don't really like a prank. Pranks anger me.
I'm not a big fan either.
Did I talk about what Ryan did to me on this podcast when he pranked me? The only time Ryan's ever pranked me was one time I came home from work. His phone was sitting on the counter and he was nowhere in the house. And I was like, huh, weird. And I was walking around the house going like, Ryan. But for some reason I was like scared. I didn't want him to jump out and be like, ah. So I was like slowly opening doors and I was sending the dogs in the rooms and stuff trying to find him. I could not find him. I opened every single door. And I started to freak out. I was like, did someone come in here and like kill him? Like, what's happening? I called Macy and I was crying. I was like, I'm about to call the cops. I don't know what to do. Ryan comes out of the pantry. The one door I didn't open.
That's hilarious.
Because it's so small. Like he had to squeeze in there. I hate pranks. I cried. I was so mad.
I would have been upset too.
But yeah, I'm not big on pranks, so I wouldn't prank you guys, but I would,
shut the door or...
No, not even that. I would just drop some little thing. Maybe I'll be a butterfly.
Okay.
Or a hummingbird. I like hummingbirds.
Hummingbirds, good idea.
Yeah.
Every time I see a hummingbird, like we're planning for you to die.
I know. Would we talk about me dying a lot on the podcast?
Okay. To be fair, you talk about you dying a lot.
That's true.
I don't usually bring it up.
That's true. I'll be a mushroom growing in your shower.
Ew. I clean my shower.
I just saw the
enough.
mushroom thing.
Our next story comes from Kaye. Hi all, my name is Kaye, pronounced as the letter K, and I have a few stories to share with you. I'll start with the potential doppelganger. When I was 7, okay, so
this is not wholesome.
Okay, the first one's not wholesome, but the next one is.
Okay.
So sorry, I forgot this was in here. When I was 7 years old, I shared a room with my then 4-year-old little brother. Most nights, my mom would come to the doorway and check on us to make sure we were okay. One night, I couldn't sleep and saw my mom at the doorway and said, "Good night." She was wearing her light pink floral bathrobe, as she often did, and said goodnight back before walking down the hallway to my parents' room. About 10 minutes later, I still couldn't sleep, so I went into my parents' room and woke my mom up. She was sound asleep, which was unusual because it normally takes her a while to fall asleep after being out of bed. I apologized for waking her up so soon after she just checked on us, but she told me that she had not checked on us that night. I also noticed that her pajamas were different from the robe I had seen her in. I could have just been a kid dreaming everything, but it's stuck with me as odd all these years later.
I don't like that it talked.
No, I don't either.
It's one thing to see it and be like, oh, that's mom walking by.
It responded.
Saying goodnight.
Someone just today commented, like, talking about mimics. Like, they said, like, mimics mimic to learn better ways to lure you. And that's why it's best to ignore them so that they don't have any information to learn from. Like if you respond and it's like, I don't know, like AI, they're just like learning with each interaction.
That's so scary.
And then they were like, what do they eat? Fear or flesh? Maybe they're vegan. And I was like, my hope is vegan. Because I hate that so much.
Why?
I don't know. I read that and literally like looked over my shoulder like, how dare you?
I would like to do another Mimics episode though, because
Those are scary.
Scares me.
Mimics listener stories?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you have a Mimic story right now, send it in. I'll schedule it for a couple months from now, so you've got a little time, but put it in right now. ghostiespod@gmail.com. Send your Mimic stories. Now, some lighthearted ones. I used to be a server at a restaurant in the middle of nowhere that was well known to be haunted. I have a few experiences, but my favorite is when after closing, I had to use the bathroom. I went into a stall to pee, and the toilet in the accessible stall flushed. These toilets were not automatic. The restaurant was closed, and I was the only person in the bathroom. My only explanation is that the ghost was spooky pooping.
Don't like that.
My final story is an event that my aunt and uncle experienced. Sorry, I'm like picturing the bathroom of the old restaurant that I worked at and imagining someone being in the stall next to me, but no one's actually in the stall next to me. Like, kind of freaked me out just now.
I don't like
it was like latent.
bathrooms
No, me
at
neither.
all.
My final story is an event that my aunt and uncle experienced. My sweet grandmother passed away last year, leaving behind her husband of 61 years. So sorry for your loss. They were the image of true love, something you only read about in fairy tales and romance novels. They truly are soulmates.
Oh,
A few years ago, my grandparents moved in with my aunt and her family so they could be taken care of in their elderly years. My grandpa had some health issues at the time and is thankfully doing much better now, so we often check on him throughout the day. This took place about a month or two after my grandma's passing, and my family and I all agree it's her still watching out for the love of her life from heaven. My grandpa had slipped and fell while getting out of the shower. My aunt was upstairs in the shower herself while my uncle was downstairs working from home. He had his headphones on, but went to check on my grandpa after a few minutes. As he passed through the kitchen to get to my grandpa's area of the house, the Alexa was blasting Middle Eastern music. Sorry, I don't know more specifics about the song beyond that, which is something they never play because it's not 80s to 2000s rock, which is pretty much all they listen to. My uncle hurried into the bathroom and helped my grandpa up, who was thankfully okay but shaken up. We all believe my grandma was trying to get my aunt and uncle's attention to check on her husband. Thank you so much for reading, and thank you for having a wonderful, entertaining, and interesting podcast. God bless you both, and I hope you have a wonderful day, Kaye. Thank you, Kaye.
that is sweet.
That is really sweet. The fact that, and especially it's like something totally different
From what they would.
opposite of what they would listen to on a regular basis, so Alexa wouldn't even have anything to
Yeah.
play off of, you know?
And if nobody's in there, it's not just going to start playing.
Yeah.
Weird.
Very weird.
I like it. That's
I like
cute.
the idea that it's his wife
That is really sweet.
being like, someone help my husband.
I hope so.
Our next story comes from Ruby. Hi, Natalie and Macy. I hope you guys are doing so well. I am a new listener of the podcast and literally cannot stop listening. So maybe thank you for that. Anyways, I have a bit of a paranormal story, if you could even call it that. My old house was built in 1993, and my dad would always joke about it being haunted because of this enormous boombox/stereo we had in the basement, which would go off in the middle of the night. I didn't take it as a joke and was terrified to go into the basement by myself. Also, because when I lived there, I was about 7 or 8. I was scared of literally everything as a child and continuously slept in my parents' room, even though I shared a room with my sister. My mom is a hairstylist, and we had a salon in our basement. Sharing a wall of the salon was the door to the unfinished part of the basement, which was just a storage room, but my family called it the dungeon.
Oh my gosh.
I never thought of that as weird until I would call it the dungeon in front of my friends, and they literally thought it was a dungeon, like to hold prisoners.
Us with the closet.
I don't know what you mean.
Oh my God. Okay, so our grandparents built their house and they had their room, and then their attached closet was just basically like another room. And so it was the closet to their bedroom, and we used to go play in the closet.
Oh,
And one time I had a friend over and I was like, do you want to go play in the closet? And she was like, no. And I was like, no, like it's a room. And she's like, no. And I felt so crazy. So yeah, I feel
Did you
that.
open the door and she was like, oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But it was very embarrassing for me. I was
That's
like, let's
funny.
go play in the closet.
We had the closet.
They
She
had
has
the
the dungeon.
dungeon.
I love that. I would, if I had a basement, I'd call it the dungeon.
That is funny.
Anyway, the door to the dungeon was around the corner in the back of the basement and couldn't be seen from the bottom of the stairs. I used to have terrible nightmares of being forced to go downstairs in the dark and would hear the door to the dungeon rattle and shake with big boom noises coming from behind the door. I am a lucid dreamer because of these nightmares I used to have and would always wake myself up as soon as I dreamt the dungeon door opening. Because of these dreams, I was terrified to go downstairs and I would never open the basement door, otherwise I would sob hysterically. There were a couple of times where I found myself in the basement with my neighbors and sisters when we would just fool around or watch movies in the movie room on the other side of the basement. At one point, I had found myself alone in the main part and heard noises coming from behind the dungeon door. When I was 8 years old, my family started to build our new house, and the last week we lived in my old house, I had another nightmare, the same as before. This time, since I knew I wasn't going to be living there for much longer, I stayed in the basement in the dream and watched the door as it opened rather than waking myself up. The door to the dungeon opened and out walked a cushion monster.
Oh my God.
It was literally a monster made out of couch cushions. I recall myself literally laughing in the dream. After this nightmare, I told my parents about it. My dad asked me when I had gone downstairs and heard the noises from inside of the dungeon. I told him when, and he left, telling me it was him in the dungeon doing some sort of woodworking behind the door for our kitchen upstairs while we were remodeling before selling our house. Since then, I am now 19 years old. I have never had a nightmare again, and I'm not scared of anything such as the paranormal or ghosts. I just think about the cushion monster I saw. Thanks for reading the story. Sorry it was kind of long. I am known as a bit of a yapper. Stay spooky, ghosties. Ruby.
That is so
Hilarious.
funny. I like that story. That's a good one.
That was good.
I love dream stories, even if they're not like scary. Like, I mean, hey, I would have never stayed. I would have never stayed. Even the cushion monster would scare me. I'd
The
be
cheese
afraid.
monster
That's what I was thinking.
of Kayla, our
Kayla
sister.
had a huge nightmare that scarred her for life to this day, that our grandpa was a monster made out of cheese,
Yeah.
terrorizing the city and eating people.
Well, the cushion monster. I love how she built it up. It was like, I watched the door slowly open and then it was just cushions.
I thought it was going to be something really dark, so I liked that story.
That was good. Thank you, Ruby. Our next story comes from Anonymous. While I was always a believer, I kind of take Natalie's viewpoint. I know the spookies are real. I respect it, but I want no part of it. I have never had a genuine experience until about 5 months ago. And if this is the only experience I have, I'll cherish it always. Within 15 minutes of my son's birth, my husband's grandpa passed away. He was a sweet, loving, quiet man that I only wish I had more time to share my children with and get to know better. He was frequently on our minds as we watched our tiny newborn grow. My husband, being the eldest grandchild, received a few of his grandpa's treasures in his last years of life. One of these treasures was a felt cowboy hat. In the chaos of wrangling my toddler and changing the diaper of my youngest, my toddler found the hat and briefly ran the house as a cowboy with the brim falling over his face. I told him to put the hat back where he found it, explaining it was very special to Dada, and went about my day. That night, as I rocked my baby to sleep, the one who arrived in this world as his great-grandpa left, I saw him. The nursery was dark, only illuminated by the red light from the sound machine, and I don't know how else to explain it. I saw him in my mind's eye, I guess. Like, I couldn't see him, but I knew he was there, and I had a clear picture of him that no camera could capture. Next to the crib, I could see him standing there. He stood taller than I'd ever seen him, in his trademark striped polo shirt, khaki pants, and oversized glasses. He simply stood there and gave me a small smile.
Oh.
I felt completely calm, just like I would if a loved one had walked in the room. No cold air or chills. He stood there, smiled, and after a few minutes, I felt he had left. Once I laid down my sleeping baby, I looked over to see my toddler had not followed my directions earlier in the day. The cowboy hat was sitting right on top of a laundry basket, right by the crib. I had never felt his presence before or since. The only time I felt him was the night his cowboy hat was left in the nursery. I truly believe he just popped by to meet his great-grandson. I love listening to y'all while I crochet or get some work done while the baby's asleep. Kind of hope you pick me to add to an episode.
That is so cute.
That was really sweet.
Oh, he was just checking in.
Yeah, thank
Didn't
you
get
for
to meet
that.
the baby.
That's
That is
beautiful.
really sweet. I love that story.
I did cry the first time I read that story, not gonna lie.
It's really good.
Our next story comes from Sophie. Hi, Ghosties. My name is Sophie. I'm so excited to finally send you this story. I've been meaning to do it for so long. I started listening to the pod a few months ago and totally freaked myself out by binging it the week my 3 roommates were out of town for Thanksgiving. I was definitely on edge for a while, but it was oddly nostalgic. Absolutely feel free to share this on the pod. I want to hear if anyone else has tried this too. I've had a love of everything paranormal since elementary school, and my family is very intuitive. My mom and grandma have had many paranormal experiences, but one in particular forced them to learn how to close off their medium-like abilities. This is not the story I'm going to tell, but the point is, despite definitely passing this sensitivity on to me, as a young kid, my mom made sure to teach me how to close myself off too. I have even been told by my friend, who is also very witchy, as we like to call it, that all the ghosts living in her house retreat to the basement whenever I come over. They know they're not allowed to mess with me.
What?
I love the idea of being able to close yourself off so completely that they just scatter.
They run away.
Yes. This means that the absolutely undeniable experiences I have are few, but I trust myself when anything does happen. Like when I experience something, it means whatever it is must be strong enough to get through to me. That's terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what videos, but on a few occasions, you two talked about the trend where people found ghosts with the Snapchat filter and it really creeped you out. This reminded me of one of my favorite / most unexplained experiences, which is what I'm going to tell you about. And I have lots of photo evidence, which I know you two love. This story is reasonably lighthearted, so hopefully it doesn't scare Natalie too much. It's from when I was 12 years old, the absolute peak of my ghost obsession, and time ghost hunting videos on YouTube were most popular.
Oh yeah.
In 2018, I spent the summer at the National Ballet of Canada. Yes, I'm a ballerina. That's cute. I love that.
I've always wanted to be a ballerina.
Me too.
I always have.
Many of us did not live in Toronto, myself included, so we stayed in their residence building, built in 1911 and the original location of the ballet studios. Here is a photo for vibes. This area is now the dining hall.
I'm so glad there's a photo. Oh, it's
beautiful.
beautiful. It's everything I've wanted to be, a ballerina in that place.
I know it's a dream. Thankfully, I stayed in the newer rooms that were added on semi-recently, but the older kids stayed in the main / older side of the building. I ended up bonding with some other kids my age over our shared fascination in the paranormal, and we formed a little ghost hunting army / fan club.
Oh gosh.
We were naturally drawn to this side of the building, but after talking with some experienced staff members, it was confirmed that yes, we were in the perfect place to experience something unexplainable. The group of us would meet up and hang out in an open but often unvisited area near the main entrance of the building. Here we would discuss our own odd experiences, watch creepy videos, freak ourselves out using a Ghost Finder app, and brainstorm all the ways we could contact something during our time here. With a smaller group of friends, I think I might have even tried to contact the spirit in the building using a Ouija board app. I only really trusted my homemade ones though. But I barely have any memories of this experience, except maybe talking to a former worker named Eddie or Henry. Anyway, once we built up the courage, we began spending the time we weren't dancing, wandering around the building, looking through our phone cameras and hoping a Snapchat filter would appear unexplainably. We didn't seem to have a ton of luck with this for a while until someone caught something in front of this weird hallway around where we would usually hang out. To paint a picture for the listeners, at first, this hall is made out of gray concrete with a couch placed on one side, but then it transitions to being completely white as it continues, and all that's at the end is a red exit sign. Here is where we found our ghosty friend. In this spot, a face would always appear, no matter whose phone or what filter. Don't worry though, I'm not just sending a photo of a floating pair of dog ears. As we got braver, going back every day, it seemed like whatever was there got braver too. The filter would sometimes follow us as we walked up and down the hallway, appearing closer and farther away, tilting its head, and even complying to our requests like sticking its tongue out when using the dog filter. As I said, this went on for a while. We would go back almost every day to check on our new friend, and everything was fun until I had an idea that took everything to a whole other level. Ever wonder what would happen if you tried to swap faces with a ghost? For some reason, I did. I had a couple ideas about what might happen. Most likely, the person's face would appear where the ghost's face was, and the background, in this case, the white hallway, would be projected onto the person's face. Even though I was excited to see if we would discover what our ghost friend looked like, in the back of my mind, I hoped that my original guess would be the result.
Me too.
It would at least be the most explainable option. Of course, this is not what happened. One of the kids in the group was the first person brave enough to stand beside our new best friend while I turned on my face swap filter. What happened made everyone's stomach drop, and I remember turning my phone off immediately and telling everyone to run. Floating beside the whited out face of our group member was a man's face. Not only did we not know this person, but that's not even how the filter is meant to work. I have the picture.
No. Oh, I'm scared. I don't want to see.
You don't?
I do.
Real?
I
Okay.
do. Show it to me. I don't want to move though.
So she said, you sound like SpongeBob. So she said, like, that's not her
That's
friend's
not her
face.
friend.
That's a man. That did not look like her friend. My only hope is that it got distorted in some way with the swap because it's a hallway that got stretched and moved. But that does.
Okay, listen.
That does not look like a child.
During 2018, funny enough, I used to love using that filter in school. That was the year I graduated high school. I have a photo like that where I did a face swap on my friend, and it was a photo of my other friend's little sister that showed up, and it stretched like that, but I could tell it was her.
Yeah.
You would know if it was someone that you know. I hate it.
Yeah. It freaks me out.
And it's so big.
It took up the whole hallway. That scares me. After the initial shock, realizing that our little friend might actually be a middle-aged man, and despite how badly we wanted evidence of the supernatural, we desperately searched for some kind of explanation. First, I checked my camera roll and made sure there was no one who resembled this mystery man. Then, I looked through the selectable faces on the filter, and again, none matched. So with this, we determined we'd have to go back to the hallway and test more. In the end, the group had discovered that the same face would appear no matter who was in the photo, and most frighteningly, no matter whose phone we used. We also noticed that the face would make slight movements, reflecting what we observed when using the typical filters. So it was still moving how it did and responding how it did before. Just now they had a face. In this photo I'm showing, I believe our ghost friend was a little annoyed with all the attention we were giving him and rolled his eyes as soon as I snapped the pic. Honestly, I don't blame him. The person in the photo is my mom, who I had been updating over the phone this whole time. I, of course, just had to show her the evidence of our findings when she picked me up after 4 weeks. Although a believer in the paranormal, my mom is also very logical, so I was secretly hoping she would have some completely obvious explanation that didn't even cross my mind. But instead, to this day, she still admits that she was thoroughly creeped. I also added a video, feel free to show it or not. I took out the audio because it's just a bunch of 12-year-olds screaming, but it shows the filter tilting and even seeming to walk towards me, as well as a clearer view of the space.
I don't want to see it.
Really?
I do.
Okay.
Show it to me. I can't move. I don't want to get exposed.
Oh! It's like kind of moving.
It came close.
Yeah, and tilting a little.
Oh, I don't like it. That is crazy.
That is basically it for this one, but I will maybe try and write out some more of either my own or friends and family stories. Thank you so much for keeping my ghost-loving spirit alive with this podcast and for entertaining me while drawing, cooking, and gaming. You two are the best. I wish you all the success in the future. You deserve it. Lots of love, Sophie.
Thank you.
I thought that story was creepy, but also kind of cute.
It was cute until I saw the face.
The face was really scary, but the story of them like running around, it felt nostalgic to me.
Me too. That just made me nauseous though.
Like running around with my friends talking about ghosts and
okay.
You know.
I wasn't 12 in 2018, but
No.
when I was 12, that's like around the time whenever we
I
would
was
be
20.
looking. Yeah. Whenever we'd be looking on YouTube and stuff like scariest video ever, ghosts captured on camera. So it did feel like, aw, like cute, but that never happened to me. Nothing
No.
like that ever happened to me.
We didn't have things like that when I was 12.
I had an iPod Touch.
Whew, spooky, but I don't know.
Ooh.
To me, I put this in here because it was cute.
It is
because
nostalgic, yes. And
it
it
felt cute to me.
I feel like a lot of people that listen are going to relate and be like, oh, cute. But then
Also,
the
that
photo.
face is really freaky. The fact that it did it no matter who was in the picture, no matter
A different
whose
phone
was taking it. Yeah, that's really weird.
because
It
I
freaks me
could
out.
write it off and be like, oh, it's just you have someone in your camera roll. You don't even notice it's taking it from the background of one of your photos
Yeah.
on everybody's phone.
But no matter
though.
whose phone, weird. Our next story comes from Alexandra. Hi, it's Alexandra again. I wanted to write to you about a potential visitation dream I had a few years ago. So my granddad died suddenly in 2019 and I was really distraught as he was the first close relative of mine to pass. I'm so sorry. A few years later, I think in 2023, I had this really vivid dream with him in it. Keep in mind, vivid dreams for me aren't out of the ordinary, but this one felt different than my normal ones I usually have. I'm sitting in, I think, a garage or living room with my family and my back is turned away from the window. My grandma randomly gasps and looks outside. I turn around and see my granddad and run to him. I think I said something along the lines of, I thought you were gone or I thought you were dead. He just looked at me, smiled, and hugged me really tight. I was full on sobbing at this point. It felt so real and that he was actually there hugging me. I woke up sobbing and kind of traumatized because how did I know he was dead in my dream? At the time, I didn't think much of it being a visitation dream or him just visiting me in general. Just that it was a very odd dream for me to have. A few weeks ago, I stumbled upon your Visitation Dreams episode and everything you described lined up exactly with what I experienced. They come at a time of grief or major life changes. I had just started dating my boyfriend of now 2 years. They will offer support or words of advice, him hugging me. It will feel very comforting and real. You will know they're gone, and you will think about it for a day or weeks. This affected me for about a month after I had the dream. When I tell you I was floored finding this out, my jaw was on the ground.
Aww.
After watching the episode, I've talked to a few people about it and they've helped me see that maybe it was his way of giving me one last hug since I never got to say a proper goodbye to him. I still think about this dream often because of how strange it was. I am happy to say though that I now think this was his way of stopping by to say hi to me instead of it being as traumatizing as I initially thought it to be. Also, side note, a few days after he passed, I saw a rainbow driving back to my house. I'm not one for signs, but I took it that he was telling me everything will be okay. I have a few more spooky stories, but that was my only visitation dream I've had. Thanks for reading my story, and I hope this brings some clarity to those who have also experienced something similar.
I love that so much.
So sweet.
Oh, goodness. And I fully 100% believe and know that it was him just being there for you.
Oh yeah, we're big believers in the visitation dreams,
and
as you could probably tell.
I've only had that one, and it was so like everything you describe as a visitation dream, and I had never heard of it before.
Yeah,
so like I'm
same,
in the same boat. That's just so sweet. I love that so much.
Me too. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm so sorry he passed, but that was beautiful. That was a beautiful story and meeting on the dream realm.
Mm-hmm.
Our next story comes from Rose. I'll start this saying, since the day I was born, my nanny always thought I had a gift. She heard my voice asking for help before knowing the complications of my birth. And ever since, the veil between this world and the next has always been thin to me. I remember past lives and get premonitions from dreams, have been in alternate realities. I'll always feel when there's someone there that isn't. Magically diagnose cars with mechanical issues, etc. And was a part of the GATE program when I was younger. That very suddenly ended by the American government. Please look into that. It's honestly wild. Makes me wonder too often about what can or would be had they had their ways. GATE, Gifted and Talented Education, I think. We had Gifted and Talented GT. We were in GT. You were in GT, yeah?
I got tested every single year, but I never got in. And it was
weird.
like, I was so angry and bitter about it forever.
That's weird.
I got tested every single year since kindergarten.
Literally
And they were
insane.
like, nah, we'll test again next year.
Well, I was in GT, but we didn't do anything weird. So I will have to look into the GATE program.
They still do GT in schools. Like,
yeah.
So interesting.
Maybe this specific, maybe it was like the GATE and not just GT.
I would like to look into that.
I don't know. I will have to see. Enough of my background, and here's my wholesome encounters. I've had many others that haven't been, but everyone loves a good friendly visitor coming and going. The first comes when my pappy was on a trip with his friend, living his dream of traveling on a Harley Davidson with his best friend.
Oh my God. Our grandpa.
For some reason, as a young 4-year-old, I really had a sinking feeling the last time we hugged. I was very vocal about objecting to this trip, and it made my nanny nervous, already aware of my ability to just know things. It's a little fuzzy due to how long ago this was, but I remember being either at daycare or school, having a dream of the adult version of me and my pappy talking about what's to come, how I'll always be on a high plane than those around me, but not to let it make me righteous. I was born to lead, to nurture, and love on a path that will seem dark and lonely, seeming to be pointless, but I had a purpose. And I was to care for my nanny as he couldn't stay to care for her. That's when I became conscious in this dream and started uncontrollably sobbing, asking him not to leave so soon as we weren't ready for him to go yet. Then he glowed so bright and warm and was gone. I woke up from nap time absolutely sobbing. My teacher consoled me and never told my mom about the incident, but not even a day later, we had gotten the call that he was in a fatal accident. While his life was almost saved, another driver was not paying attention to the collision ahead, and his friend had lost a quarter of his arm trying to save him too. Being a miracle, even one of them had lived. My nanny had realized I was surprisingly solemn given what had happened, and it being a very sudden accident. With my 4-year-old vocabulary, I tried explaining to her that he had already said goodbye to me in a dream, and I just hoped he would make it home. Even though he never did, his warning gave me time to preemptively grieve. She looked at her Bible filled with notes, tapped it a few times, thanking God for accepting him in his kingdom, and she tried to do her best to nurture me in the light. Ever since, he comes and goes, periodically being a very ghosty type ghost, doing very punny old man humor things, always when I'm in a sad place and need a little love and light in my life. For some reason, he loves messing with the dishes, and I'd come to learn it was his favorite chore. Even though he was fully blind, he could at least feel the cleanliness of it, so it's what he did. He'd always make something impossible to just move and fly in the middle of the room. Every time. From a skillet in a stable dish rack, falling and somehow making its way out, but the rack was still where it should be, so it wasn't the cat being a cat. Then there was a time he swept all of the soap off of our bathroom shelf. My mom was in the room next to it working, not seeing my dog Crash. She yelled at him, thinking his zoomies got the best of him, but he was literally sleeping on my feet at the time. So I yelled back, Mom, Crash is sleeping with me. The shower curtain and the door is open and nothing is there. And now nothing is on the shelf. Absolute silence from her for a good few seconds. Oh, hi, Dad. Can we not do that while I work? Is all she had to say, and kept on carrying on like nothing happened. So, me being me, I went and picked up the bathroom, and after she tried reasoning, thinking a mouse might have done it, then I explained that it literally had looked like someone had swept their arm across the shelf to knock it all off at once, and a mouse couldn't move full bottles of shampoo like that. Mm-hmm. She just shrugged and said, maybe he thinks I stink and need a shower. A few months later, we were reorganizing the kitchen, and somehow the entire box of scissors, knives, and other large kitchen utensils went from the kitchen table to spread across the floor in the middle of the room. Me and my mom were both in the kitchen as this happened. Somehow, none of the sharp things got to us, but I watched the box get picked up and dumped on the floor. My mom somehow convinced herself that the box had just fallen over. There's no way. I watched the whole thing. It made me wonder if I didn't accidentally activate telekinesis or something scary. Then we realized his favorite Bugs Bunny pizza cutter was in the box. I made sure to keep it in the drawer, thinking he misunderstood the reason for packing the utensils.
Aww.
He was like, do not get rid of this.
That's really cute. I need to see this Bugs Bunny pizza cutter, though. I would love to see it.
I know this is getting long, but I have a few more I'll still write since I'm in the swing of things. The next stories are about my stepfather that has recently passed in the last 6 years. His name was Rick, and he definitely left me too soon. Same as with him, the last hug we had together made me feel a very unwavering sense of dread. So before I left for the airport, I made a joke about the hug not being our last because I'll need another one when I get home. He laughed and agreed. Surrounding his death is a story of a heartbroken man and a torn home, drowning in depression, self-loathing, and resentment towards my mom. When I heard the news of the state of his health, I immediately started praying to my gods, leaving more offerings than normal, reaching out harder to the higher powers that illuminated my path, hoping he could find peace and move on. Unfortunately, this was not the case due to all the emotional unrest surrounding his death. He was a warrior and the best second/chosen dad, but he did not see himself as such. He was my hero, however. I am so sorry. After his death and days of mourning, sending offerings in the river hoping he'd find a path either to me or where he needed to be with his parents. Not even a week later, my ex-fiance had seen a shadow the size of him just standing in the hallway, getting a very uneasy feeling. I could feel him too, but he already felt very far from his human soul. So I did a spell, hoping to give light to his darkened spirit. Then he became more playful, knocking over Funko Pops and making the odd stumble around when I'd leave him alcohol as an offering. I had never felt so close to my practice of Norse paganism, so I got some tarot cards from a friend, and somehow a second Emperor card was manifested. I video called her to ask about it and thinking it was a defect of the deck and I was missing a different card. Wrong. I had 81 cards. The deck was 80 count. The Emperor card had looked remarkably like him, almost exactly if he were ever portrayed in a fantasy world. It was the Ethereal Visions Tarot by Matt Hughes if you're interested in a visual. And for those with no knowledge of tarot, the Emperor is often seen as a card associated with father figures, finding power in your masculine energy, order, structure, and taking responsibility, facing outward challenges in a stoic manner. Very much headstrong man energy. Ever since this encounter, I had a psychic awakening not long after returning back to the US. Then I spiraled into psychosis due to not following the same structure I had set for myself in the UK. On top of realizing my ex-boyfriend looked way too painfully similar to my stepdad when he was in his 20s, just a little different in size. Ever since I left him and the deck I had behind, it's been a lot harder to connect, but it's also helped me move forward in my life by leaps and bounds. This year, he did visit for a time, and my boyfriend's cat was startled by him and his energy. She had never growled before, but there she was in the corner growling at the Desert Storm hat I had bought in his remembrance. I pet her, asking if it was Rick, and not to be scared as I know his size is weird and crazy taller than she's used to. She had looked at me and wrapped her tail around my arm and hand, sat on the arm of the couch, and just laid down. I asked her if she could help him to Anubis, as 6 years in limbo, even as a protector of mine, is too long to be alone. She slowly blinked towards him and then looked back to me, and her pupils were weirdly tiny. I kissed her head, saying thank you, and I gave her a few treats as my thanks. Since then, I haven't felt him or really anything else I had lingering around me, hoping the goddess associated with my boyfriend's cat had blessed me with protection instead of the elders attached to me naturally. I hope you enjoyed my mini novel. Those are my more lighthearted and wholesome stories of ghostly family members coming and going as I needed them. And to those that have lost anyone too soon, they're never gone as long as they're needed by you. However, you should understand it's hard to stay human in the non-human realms unless recognized as one by you regularly. Even Catholics leave offerings to their lost and loved ones, so the light never leaves their spirit. Your friendly Norse pagan.
Wow, again, everyone that writes in needs to write books. I was so into the story, yeah. I just kind of forgot we were here. I didn't say a word. I was just, you probably
like visualizing it, the whole thing in your
head.
Yeah,
I don't even want to watch that back because I was probably like glazed over. I forgot we were in the pod. I was just listening.
I'm so sorry for your loss, but I love the story that her grandpa came to her and was leading her and saying this is what you have for your future and you need to, grow into who you're going to be, and saying I am here for you, I love you,
Yeah.
Here is our last story. It's from Abby. Hi Ghosties, I recently found your YouTube channel and have loved listening to your videos while I'm working. You both have excellent vibes and are so sweet. It's always a joy to listen to you. While listening to one of your videos that mentioned experiences with ghost animals or pets that have passed, I realized I have a story to share.
I don't want it.
You didn't think that you'd get away without a pet story, did you?
God.
This is our wholesome stories.
My eyes have already been swollen from allergies. Let me just lock in.
All right. I got my dog Tucker when I was in middle school. He was a ball of curly white fluff and the best of boys. He followed me everywhere. He followed me. I cried reading the story. He followed me everywhere and always wanted to be held. My family used to joke that he didn't have a spine because of the way he could fold himself into my arms. Most nights he slept tucked under my arm and kind of nestled into the side of my neck. I couldn't take Tucker with me to college, but my family lived nearby, so we were never separated for that long. My mom would send me pictures of him just sitting in the middle of my bedroom floor, waiting for me. By the time I entered my graduate program, I had planned to take Tucker with me, but his health had started to deteriorate, and I worried about separating him from our other dog, Jake, who was also quite old at that point. Tucker had developed a pretty nasty tumor in his chest, and I remember the first time it really clicked that he wasn't doing well was when he stopped laying on his back. This is usually how he liked to be held, and I always carried him around like a baby. But as he got older and the tumor developed, that position was no longer comfortable for him. In 2022, he passed. My parents called me, and I remember feeling so guilty that I wasn't there. I spent the whole day going through my phone, collecting all my photos of him over the years and sorting them into an album. It was an awful day. I was truly so angry with myself. I've struggled with anxiety and depression all my life, and Tucker had been with me through all of it, but I couldn't be there for him at the end.
I don't want to do this anymore.
I went to bed miserable. I know, I'm really trying to hold it together right now.
I think this is the worst one.
For context, I've a long history of sleep paralysis, night terrors, and otherwise very vivid dreams, but every now and again, I have a good dream that has all the realism of the bad ones. So after I went to bed, I woke up at some point in the middle of the night because I could hear scratching at the side of my bed. This didn't frighten me because it was a very specific sound. It sounded like the way Tucker would paw at my bed when he wanted to be let up. Usually in these dreams, I cannot move, but I was able to sit up and look down to see my boy looking healthy. No tumor, all bright-eyed and full of energy. I remember feeling shocked and elated. I actually screamed, "My baby!" and he immediately jumped up into my bed, something he had not been able to do for many years now. I can't look at you, I'm gonna cry. He pranced around on top of my bed, wagging his tail, and ran into my arms. I could feel him. I mean, it was like he was really physically there. He tucked himself into my arms the way he used to, and I got to fall asleep with my boy in my arms one more time. When morning came, I felt relieved of all of my guilt. It was like my boy came to find me, so I could see he was okay now. I still dream about him on occasion, though never quite so vividly.
I hate you.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. Okay. Sorry that was super long, but thanks for listening. I've had spookier experiences with sleep paralysis featuring my sleep paralysis demon, whom I call Charlotte, if you'd ever like to hear those. But for now, I wanted to send something kind of happy. Feel free to share it.
Stop it.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'm so sorry for your loss, Abby, but him coming to you that night is just like one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. I even emailed her back like, I cried. This is not okay.
I've said it before. I can't do the pet stories because I genuinely don't know what I'm going to do. I want to die before my dogs.
Yeah.
I'm so serious.
Because they're your best friends, your buddies, like your family, you know? I told you to get your tissues, everybody. So if you're crying with us, yeah.
Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. Thanks for being here with us today. Like this video if you liked it. Share it with your friends if you feel compelled to do so. And subscribe for more. If you're on audio, please leave us 5 stars. And if you have a story that you'd like to send in to us, you can email us at ghostiespod@gmail.com. It's also written down in the description. Also in many other places you can find it if you need to see it written.
Okay, I will say, Tucker was definitely with you. And I'm sorry for being so angry. I'm not angry. I'm just sad. That was a beautiful story.
Angry at me for
I'm angry
bringing this to her at this moment.
But that was really sweet.
It was a beautiful story.
Get out of my house.
Okay.
And leave a dog emoji for Tucker.
All right, yes. Leave all the dogs in the comments for us, please.
Goodbye.